In the meantime, President Biden and his administration had promised that even though we were leaving Afghanistan, we would never give up the fight for Afghan women and girls and their freedom and their education, even after we sent all of our troops home.
We'll continue to speak out for the basic rights of the Afghan people, especially women and girls, as we speak out for women and girls all around the globe.
With regard to women and other Afghans at risk going forward, I will use every diplomatic, economic, political, and assistance tool at my disposal to do everything possible to uphold their basic rights.
So is that happening? Has that been happening? What have they been doing? We've seen what has happened to the schools. They've been shut down. The university is now overrun by the Taliban. Afghan's ambassador to the United States says that because of those actions and what she's seen play out, she no longer trusts the United States government. Listen to this exchange with Jonathan Swan from Axios on HBO. Watch.
Did you get the sense that President Biden cared about the fate of Afghan women?
I don't think so. He said the U.S. could not be the police of the world to protect women in any other country.
So let's bring in former State Department spokesperson Morgan Ortagus. Morgan, you spent a lot of time in the region at a lot of these negotiations that were going on in the beginning to try to find a way forward with the Taliban and the Afghan government. You know, as you watch that and you watch that interview, what goes through your mind?
That was an incredibly tough interview to watch, and I thought Jonathan Swan did a great job. But you're seeing the Afghan ambassador, you know, until the Taliban took over, she was the representative of that country. I think she's about 35 years old, so she represents many women in Afghanistan who may have been born under the Taliban, but received a future that they never thought they would have, right? They went to high school, they went to college and had higher education, and then took positions representing their government, and that is not a future that women in Afghanistan can look forward to under Taliban rule. You know, the Taliban is saying that these measures that are in place now that women cannot go back to school or can't go into the workplace are just temporary until they get the security environment more in place. You know, that was said in 1996, and obviously that was permanent until the U.S. invasion in 2001. So what we really have to look forward to here, Martha, is what can this administration do beyond rhetoric to protect the rights of women and young girls in Afghanistan? And the problem, I think, fundamentally, Martha, is I don't think that this administration understands the difference between military might, action, whatever it may be, and rhetoric, right? They think supportive statements and tweets and saying, we will fight for Afghan women, and holding up signs saying they'll fight for Afghan women, they somehow think that's the same as hard measures and tactics. And we know it's just not. And unfortunately, you know, these women have just been lost over these past few months, and who knows what will remain for the future of young girls.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about the fact that the American University in Taliban, I mean, well, yes, that's what it is now. The American University in Afghanistan has now been overrun, and it's taken over. There is no college there anymore. It's been taken over by the Taliban. So there's no classes, there's no nothing. This is President Biden speaking back in February of 2020 on CBS. Watch this.
Don't you bear some responsibility for the outcome if the Taliban ends up back in control and women end up losing the rights?
No, I don't. Do I bear responsibility? Zero responsibility. The responsibility I have is to protect America's national self-interest and not put our women and men in harm's way to try to solve every single problem in the world by use of force.
What do you say to that, Morgan?
You know, it's interesting. When I originally saw that clip, Martha, I thought it was from one of the August interviews right after, you know, we were trying to get all of our troops and people out of Afghanistan, because the rhetoric is very similar. And I think if there had been one foreign policy question really asked in the presidential debates last year, or if there had been any really questioning of Biden the way that Margaret Brennan did right there, people would have realized that his foreign policy rhetoric on Afghanistan has been consistent. Now, a lot of people people say, but in the Trump administration, we also negotiated, we were trying to get troops out. Yes, but there is a difference between a conditions-based approach and having a small number of troops on the ground in order to keep the peace, right? We know that there's no ability to have leverage over the Taliban now. We claim there's economic leverage, but there's no ability to have leverage over them to get what you want from the negotiating table, and that's why you're continuing to see them act as if it's 1996 in Afghanistan all over again. And I'm afraid, Martha, that history will repeat itself not only for women, but most likely for Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Afghanistan. Even the intelligence community thinks it's sooner rather than later before these groups reconstitute and perhaps pose a threat to the homeland.
Well, that's real quick, if you can. You know, that's the issue. So it's great. It's nice to be nice, and it's nice to help people, but there's also a national security imperative under educating women in countries like Afghanistan. Real quick, if you can.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I was on the board of the Friends of the American University in Afghanistan for a long time. I traveled there to speak to women, to talk to them about becoming entrepreneurs. And I got to tell you, Martha, the images of their faces when I was there in 2017, speaking to young entrepreneurs, the images of their faces have been burned in my mind over the past few months. And we cannot solve every problem in the world, certainly not saying that. But we need to solve problems where you have terrorist groups that will constitute and form a threat to the homeland. Yeah. We need to be able to solve that problem.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Morgan. Good to have you here. Morgan Ortagus.